Hi, Bio30. So we're going to continue our discussion about the nervous system. We're going to talk about the senses and then the eye specifically for this next video or two. So we've got sensory organs, the eyes, the ears, tongue, nose, skin. Each of these has specific receptors that require specific inputs. So for example, the eyes input light energy, ears input sound or vibrational energy, the tongue is chemical energy, the nose is chemical energy through smells. The skin is a fun one. It takes mechanical energy and heat energy because you've got various different types of inputs from pressure to temperature to pain, and those are all receptors inside of the skin. And so basically, all of these different receptors are going to be used differently to receive different types of inputs. And then when we process those inputs as different sounds or smells or tastes or sights, it's happening in our brain. So our first video here is going to focus on the human eye. And so the human eye is going to have a discussion regarding a lot of the stuff we've already talked about in like Alberta Education Grade 8. So the lens, pupil, iris, cornea, retina, the optic nerve. Cool thing about the eye here is that the images that your retina actually gets displayed are flipped and upside down compared to what your brain registers. And so your brain has to basically flip this image back right side up. We'll talk about why in a bit here. So the eye itself is going to be made up of the following anatomical parts, and we'll go through each of these successively here. So the sclera, the choroid, the retina, the fova centralis, which is the focal point, the optic nerve, which is where all of the nerves join, the blind spot, the ciliary muscles, the iris, the pupil, and the lens, as well as the cornea. So we're going to talk about all of these in the next couple slides here. So the sclera and the cornea are the outside layer, and this is going to be the sclera here. It's the white portion, maintains structure, supports and protects the eye. The cornea is clear, and it's going to help to bend the light onto the lens so that the lens can bend the light onto the fova centralis. The choroid layer is your retinal layer, and it's going to have a sort of darker backing so that we can prevent light from scattering across the retina. And then the iris is going to be that colored part of the eye, and this is the part that controls how much light is going to come into that lens. Here's a better picture here of the cornea in relation to the iris. So the lens is going to change shape in order to focus light on the proper spot of the retina. There's two types of fluids inside of the eyeball. The aqueous humor sits behind the cornea, and the vitreous humor sits inside of the center of the eye. The vitreous humor is thicker, and it's designed to give some nutrients, but mostly structure to the entire eyeball. Aqueous humor has a lot of nutrients, maintains the shape of the cornea around the lens. One way I like to remember this is that aqueous humor starts with an A, and A comes first in the alphabet, which is why the aqueous humor here is at the beginning. And then vitreous humor starts with a V. V is later in the alphabet or after A, and so it's going to be at the back. The retina itself is the light-sensitive portion of the eye. It contains rods and cones. Rod cells are photoreceptors specialized for dim light situations. You don't see a lot of detail with rod cells, but you do see well in darker environments. Cone cells are really good for bright light environments where you have a lot of color and you need a lot of fine detail. So you have both rods and cones, and each are going to be specialized for different types of vision situations. Different animals have different sort of combinations of rods and cones, which is helpful. And the interesting thing here is that nocturnal predators are probably going to have more more rods because they're typically active more at night. They don't need as many cones because it's not adaptive for them to have cones when they don't hang out during the day very much. A lot of nocturnal animals will have something called the tapetum, which is a reflective layer on top of the retina, which helps to bend and direct light, any light from the moon or reflections that is available at night, onto the retina to see even better. The fova is the focal point, or the highest sort of acuity area of the eye. Lots of cones over here. This is where you're going to get your highest detail. So the lens is always trying to get light, images and light directed right to that point there. The blind spot is where there are no cones and no rods, and this is because this is where all of the retinal neurons are going to attach to the optic nerve. Okay, ciliary muscles and suspensory ligaments are just muscles and ligaments that help to change the shape of the lens, change the shape of the iris, and move the entire eyeball itself in different directions. Okay, the process of changing the shape of your lens is called accommodation. Okay, in the next video, we're going to talk about how we are able to transmit that information to the brain.